Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, host and head bookologist here at the Get Literate podcast. I'm a book loving, notebook hoarding reader and writer on a mission to change lives one book and one notebook at a time. On this podcast, we explore the power of bookology. What's that? That's the study of books and reading and notebooks and writing mixed with mindful practices and creativity to create lives we love. Here, you'll find episodes exploring the reading and writing life and how they can make our actual lives better. You'll get book recommendations and notebooking prompts around particular themes, and you'll even hear from authors and special guests who can fuel our reading and writing hearts and help us take inspired action in our own daily practices. So, grab a notebook and your TBR list, and let's get literate. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Get Literate podcast. I'm Stephanie Affinito, your host and bookologist, here with another episode on how reading and writing can make life better. I am really excited to bring this episode to you today because, like I usually do, I walked the walk and talked the talk. So, if you listened to last week's episode, I shared a 5x4 routine map that you could take to your notebook to end the last 90 days of 2024 strong. Now, I do these same notebook routines that I recommend to you first before I share them with you, and the 5x4 routine map was no exception. But what that 5x4 routine map sparked was even more planning. So, in that map, we talked about planning little things for the last 90 days of the year, something each day, each week, each month, and perhaps even a yearly goal. It is a map that you can use at any time of the year when you just want to bring some structure and clarity and intention to a particular period of your life. Well, I loved that 5x4 routine so much that I spent some time really digging into one aspect that was on my particular routine map, and that was my podcasts. I am trying really hard to grow both of my podcasts, the one you're listening to right now, and my other passion project podcast, which is Kid Lit Love, where I talk with some of my most favorite children's literature authors ever, along with some debut authors and everyone in between. And we have some really wonderful conversations. But I wanted to be more intentional about how I was planning all of the episodes that I was releasing, including the bonus content for the Get Literate Patreon community. It turns out this 5x4 map, while it can be a structure all its own, it really was a launching pad. And so now, as I sit here today, I have all of the episodes planned that I want to bring to you on this Get Literate podcast completed through the end of the year. No, I didn't record them, but they are planned. I know what I want to say. And I've got to tell you, that is such a weight off of my shoulders to know that my ducks are in a row and I have everything pulled together that I want to have pulled together. That's the beauty of a routine map. That is the beauty of putting things on the page in a notebook. And so I'm really excited to bring to you the first episode that was generated out of that 5x4 routine map brainstorm. So, what is that episode about? Well, today I want to talk to you about something that's really important to me. It is really important to my reading life, and it's how my reading life ends up making my actual life better. And that is taking inspired action. So I want to backtrack a little bit because when I think about having a beautiful reading and writing life, one that is filled with reading and writing that we make time for and we have time for, we're reading books that we love, we are abandoning books that we don't. We look at our notebooks as invitations and not these things to do. And in the process, our life just feels better and gets better and is often bigger in the process because of this wonderful, nourishing, restorative reading and writing that we're doing. Now, in order to get there, there's three things I want to talk about really quickly before I dive into the meat of the episode. right? To have a reading life, and I want to talk specifically about reading today, to have a reading life that makes your actual life better, we have to do three things. And those three things each have a different set of benefits that gives different kinds of power to our actual life. So the very first thing we have to do is we have to read, right? We have to make time to read. We need to start with just 6 minutes because only 6 minutes of reading will start to kick off a host of physical, cognitive, and emotional benefits. I've talked about them on the podcast before, but just 6 minutes of reading can literally calm your nervous system down and help you make better decisions about what comes next. Now, if you move that up to 30 minutes, that's the magical number we want to strive for. 30 minutes of reading in a row has the same effect on our parasympathetic nervous systems as 30 minutes of yoga. Not on our muscles, but yes, on our parasympathetic nervous system. So, in order for our reading life to make our actual life better, we have to read, and we want to aim for 30-minute segments of reading as many times as we can fit into our week. Now, on top of that, right, we can get all of the benefits just by reading anything. But magic really happens when we read particular things that are just right for us. We think about the kinds of people we want to be, how we want to feel, and the things we want to do, and we choose books that will help us reach those particular goals. That's paying attention to our reading hearts. What fills us up? What makes us feel good? What can help us from the page that we can bring into our actual lives? And then layer three, right? We have our reading habits, we have our reading hearts, and then we have our reading communities. What do we do when we're done with a book? What do we do to connect with others around that book? And what do we do to take what is in that book and bring it into our actual community in real life? That's what I want to talk about today. Inspired action. So there's three layers of benefits to reading often: the physical, cognitive, and mental benefits. We've got the benefits to our actual lives of reading books that are right for us to help us grow into the person and into the feelings and in the things we want to do. And that inspired action, it makes life bigger. It broadens our communities, it can strengthen our relationships, and it can help us try new things to widen our perspectives. So that's why it is such a key component. And it really makes you feel like your reading life literally comes alive in your actual one. So today, I want to talk about 10 ways that you could take inspired action from the books that you are reading so that your reading life makes your actual life bigger and better. So I will go through those 10 items quite quickly, right? I want to get you off of this podcast and into your book, but I do want to link them with an example from my own reading life of how that particular book helped me take inspired action. So in listening, I'm hoping that you'll get ideas for ways that you can bring your books to life. And I'm hoping that you will have title suggestions that you could start reading. And then third, I'm hoping this will spark something entirely different and entirely new for you. Okay, let's get to it. What are the 10 ways that our books that we read could spark inspired action in our actual life to make it better? These are not in any particular order. I'm just going to start at the top and go 1 through 10. But number one is that books can help us try something new. Anything. I have said this multiple times on the podcast before, but I'm going to say it again because it's a powerful book that I can pull so many examples from. But This Time Could Be Different by Kristen Weierman. This book made me try so many new things. I tried audio meditations, listening to them and creating them. I tried creating my own face cream, which I still can't believe that I did. And I even tried different yoga classes, all because this character in the book was acting like such a wonderful life mentor. So when you're reading a book and you're reading something and it makes you stop and think, Huh, that would be fun. That'd be interesting. I've never done that. Oh, I could never do that, right? Any of those thoughts, those point to something that you might actually like to try in your own life, right? You wouldn't be thinking of that idea or having that little nudge or spark unless it was meant for you. So, number one, a book could spark you to try something new. Number two, a book could inspire a motto for your life, or it could spark a life lesson for your life. Now, Rachel Linden's books are perfect for this. I love The Magic of Lemon Drop Pie, the motto of be honest, stay present, and seek joy. I think I'm getting that exactly right. It may be out of order, but that is a motto that I have taken with me ever since I read that book. And her books are filled with those kinds of little magical motto nuggets that you might be able to take with you. And even if the character doesn't have a motto that they have decided for themselves, generally we can pull themes or statements or quotes from the books that we read and turn them in to some sort of motto or some sort of affirmation that we can then bring into our own daily lives too. Now, number three is one of my favorites. Pull a quote. Find a quote, find a nugget, a phrase, a sentence, something that made you stop and think about it. Underline it, highlight it, tab it, sticky note it, write it in your quote notebook, snap a picture of it on your phone and edit it so that it stands out. Pulling quotes from the books that we read are like these little gems, things that make us stop, they make us think, and if we really want to keep going with it, we can write about those quotes in our notebooks too. Now, I have a quote notebook filled with hundreds of quotes, but I wanted to pull one book that I thought was especially appropriate for this time of the year. So I flipped through my own quote notebook and I found a quote that I loved from Pumpkin Everything by Beth Labonte. Such a fun, sweet, pumpkin spice themed book to read at this time of the year. And this one jumped out at me. Here's her quote. It's usually when you stop trying so hard that the magic happens. Right? And isn't that the case when you stop obsessing, stop worrying, stop overthinking, and just relax or rest or be a solution, an idea, something comes to you? I loved that quote. It's usually when you stop trying so hard that the magic happens. And then think about why that quote jumped out at you. What lesson did you need from it? What idea might you be able to take from it? Up number four is one of my most fun lists in my notebook, and that is my bucket list. Right? So I read books, and many times I want to dive into those books. I want to jump into the pages and visit those locations. And most of the time, I cannot do that because these are fictional places, but sometimes I can. Or sometimes it can spark something that I want to do that is related to that fictional place that I could get access to in real life. And the best example I have for this is how many places have been added to my bucket list to Michigan because of Viola Shipman, AKA Wade Rouse. I have never wanted to visit another state more because of the books that I have read. I want to visit the beautiful, lush landscapes. I want to visit the giant Christmas store. I want to visit it all, right? And I bet that when you have read, you have decided, oh my gosh, I read a book that was set in Italy, right? And so now you want to go visit Positano, right? Happened in a book that I've read by Rebecca Searle, right? So maybe a book sparks something in you that you want to actually go see or visit or travel to. And so it could spark adding more items to your bucket list. I like to call it my bookish bucket list. Number five is books can help you connect with someone. Right? Have you ever read a book about long lost friends or childhood friends that were reacquainted or besties in a novel, and it just made you think about your own friends, maybe the friends that you see, the friends that you haven't seen in a while. Books can offer us the reminder that those connections matter in our life. And so a book may inspire you to pick up your phone and call a long lost friend or text a family member just to check in. Email a coworker you haven't worked in a while and say, "Just wanted you to know I was thinking of you." One particular book did that a lot for me, and it was rightfully a rightful suggestion because it was a nonfiction book on the power of friendship. I'm talking about Laura Tremaine's The Life Council. That was a book that got me thinking about relationships and friendships, and I reconnected with a couple of people because of that. Friends I haven't seen, coworkers I hadn't seen, childhood friends that my kids had, but I got separated, from their parents because our lives change. Books can act as sparks to build or rebuild those connections. And so just a simple text after reading a book can be a way that the book made your life better. Now, number 6 is a fun one. I love to read, and this is going to sound terrible, but I do love to read with my phone close by. Not because I want to be distracted or look at my notifications, but because I want to be able to search Google when I want to, right? I want to be able to read about a location and then find it on Google Maps. I want to be able to read about a new situation or a new plot line, and maybe the author uses a word I'm not familiar with. I want to be able to look it up. If they mention a plant that I've never heard of, I want to be able to see it. And so reading a book and then Googling something, literally as simple as Googling something, can actually help you take inspired action and just make your life be a little bit more enriched. Meg Tady's Super Bloom is a book that did this for me. The theme throughout that book are these beautiful super blooms, and I had never known about them. I've never seen them in person. And so you better believe it. I was on Google instantly looking up what these super blooms could possibly look like to not only help my own understanding of the story, but just to give me more knowledge that I didn't have. And by the way, after I Googled super blooms and learned all about them, you better believe that seeing a super bloom somewhere ended up on my bookish bucket list too. Now, number 7, one very, very simple way to take inspired action from the books that you read is to simply read another book based on something from the last book, right? So maybe the next book you choose is by that same author because you enjoyed it so much, and that just broadened your reading life a little bit. Maybe you choose a next book that is also about historical friendships because you really love that plot line, and so you seek a book about that. Maybe you were reading a book and it talked about a certain kind of plant that you looked up and you had never known about before. And so you went and got a nonfiction book about how to grow that plant in your own garden, right? Do you see what happens? These little things can spark action in our own life that enriches it in really small but really meaningful ways. So when you're reading your book and you close that last page, just sit and think for a minute. How could this book help me determine what to read next based on those little sparks or nudges I was feeling? And it can be as simple as that. I know when I read All the Lonely People, I could not get enough about that content. I adored that author, and that started me on a little mini author study of Mike Gale's other books, along with listening to podcasts of his interviews and finding him online and social media and learning about his backstory, right? It makes life better, a little bit bigger, a little bit broader. We're broadening the communities that we engage in. Now, number eight is a simple one. Write. WRITE. One very simple way to enrich your life as a result of the books that you're reading is to write about what you are thinking either during or after the book ends. Right? Just stream of consciousness writing. Here was the book I read. Here's what I thought about it. Here's what it sparked for me. Here's what I think it wanted me to know. Here's the lesson that I'm taking from it. It can be as formal as or as informal as you like. And some books are especially suited for this kind of inspired action. I cannot think of a better example right now than Beth Kempton's Kokoro. I purchased it from across the pond so that I could get it early, but it is releasing now in the United States. And it has not only the most beautiful language and the most beautiful lessons and invitations, but it has these amazing questions at the end of each chapter that are designed to make you think and are designed to make you head to your notebook to really explore what you just read in the book and how it can influence your actual life. Now, this can be done whether your book has prompts in it or not, whether it is fiction or nonfiction. If a book spoke to you, if it took your breath away, if it made you just stop and pause after you closed it, if you needed to hug it, right? You might want to write about it and explore why that was so important to you and how you can take that book forward with you, even though you are done reading it. Now, number 9 is a fun one. This is a really great way to broaden who we talk to about books and broaden the communities that we end up interacting with as a result of reading those books. And one that jumps out at me is a book that I read and loved, The Townsend Family Recipe for Disaster by Shauna Robinson. I loved this book. It had everything that I love in a book. It had family, it had friends, it had drama, it had food, it had some recipes. It was just a wonderful book. And I went online like I usually do, and I post my reviews on Goodreads, on Amazon, but also on social media, and I tagged the author. And sometimes when I do this, I get responses back. Sometimes I get a comment or a like. Sometimes I get nothing at all. But for this author, she wrote me this really beautiful, heartfelt message that said, I hadn't got much feedback from the book yet. You're an early reader, and I just can't tell you how much it meant to me to get this beautiful review. And I thought, I didn't even have to take much time to do that. And now I feel connected to this author in a different way. I feel better about taking the time to do that. Just a simple reaching out and letting someone know how much their words impacted you and made you feel. That is such a beautiful gift to pay it forward. Now, number 10. Number 10 is something that I say I'm going to do more often of, but I usually don't, and that's because I am a terrible cook. But number 10, a fun way to have a book enrich your life is to cook something, right? So many books have themes of food in them. Some of them even have recipes in the back. One book that comes to mind is The Christmas Table by Donna Van Leer. This is a book that will be very timely in a couple of weeks. It's a beautiful holiday story, and it comes chock full of recipes. Now, another whole entire book series, Joanna Fluke, has these wonderful cozy mystery slash romancy kinds of books that I adore. And all of her books are filled with wonderful recipes and treats as well. Now, just because the book doesn't have recipes doesn't mean it can't spark some sort of cooking or baking. Something in the book could just trigger a childhood memory, or a mention of something from the character can make you head to your recipe box or dig through your family recipes as well. And just the simple act of making something, baking something, and sharing it with someone else, well, that is inspired action from the book that made life better for a little bit. And I'm hoping you see that these 10 things, they are not big, grand things. You don't read a book and then quit your job, or read a book and then decide to travel around the world. And while you can do those things, certainly, I think they are just not as feasible for most of us. But these 10 ways are small enough that anyone could do this at any time and any book, as long as you just were open to it. And let me tell you, once you start getting of the habit of expecting books to make your life better in some way, expecting books to help you take inspired action, it's hard to read a book and not have that happen because you have that wonderful expectation that this book could be the thing that makes the day better. This book could be the spark that gives you a new idea or a new recipe or an old connection with a friend come to life. I could keep going on and on and on about these, and I have more than 10 ways that you could take inspired action from the books that you read. So if this is something that interests you, I have an entire course built around this idea. It's called Grow a Restorative Reading Life, and it's all about making the time to read, reading the things that matter, and then taking action from them so that your reading life makes your actual life feel bigger and better in the process. So I will put links to that course in the show notes. I'm revamping it one more time this fall to help people settle into some wonderful fall and winter reading, and I can't wait to put those additions in there. Now it is your turn. I would love to know what you think about this idea of taking inspired action in your life from the books that you've read. And of course, I want to know your ideas too. There are so many possibilities. It depends on you, it depends on the book you're reading, and it depends on your interactions between those two things and where you are in your life. And I would love to know some of your ideas that I could keep adding to my list as well. So you can find me online at alitlife.com and leave a comment in the show notes for this episode. You can head to social media and find me at Affinito Lit. And my favorite, go ahead and click record on that audio button and send me an audio message letting me know what you think. Thanks so much for listening to this episode, and especially thank you for being open to the ways that your reading life can make your actual life feel better. And more importantly, have some fun, read a book, try something new, pick one of those 10 things, and just see how it makes you feel. I can almost guarantee that you will get quite addicted to this stance around books, and that's a really good thing. So happy reading, everyone. And thanks for listening to this episode. And I will see you inside the next episode of the Get Literate podcast. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Get Literate podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. And if you want more, you might like to join my Patreon community. There, you'll find additional inspiration for your reading and writing life, like bonus podcast episodes, book calendars, monthly book clubs, notebooking inspiration, live events, giveaways, and more. It's only $5 a month, and you get instant access to all of the previous content too. Learn more at getliterate.co. And one more thing, if you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow, and it builds our bookish and notebookish community too. Thanks for listening.